most of us realize how the city's evolved over time, but I think it's important that we hear kind of from each of the former mayors during their tenure, what do they see as how the city changed during that time that they were mayors? Why don't we go ahead and start with Mayor Silverman?
Okay, I think thank you, Ray. I think basically Montgomery, the change has all been basically to have more residential, have more things for the residents. For instance, as we've talked about in some of the other, the park system. Our park system is probably one of the best park systems in any of the communities around. We've got the swimming pool now that has been built or was built during our council terms. It's just that there's so many things here now, and how it's been improved. You know, I think just everything that we see here has changed. I mean, I brought it up before in a lot of things, so a lot of it would be repetitious, and I'll just pass some of the time to somebody else who wants to go ahead and talk. I think we've had tremendous councils after us that have continued, and I always said that if, in fact, I wasn't going to really get involved in the city that much after I left because I decided not to run. That's up to the people that are running. And I'll be up here if there's anything that you do that I really am opposed to, and I'll let you know. And in all these years, I haven't been up.
We haven't seen you.
You haven't seen me. So I mean, I think that whatever's been done and by the people involved, whether it's been the city, the staff, the council members, it's been all for the good. So.
Thank you, Ivan. Dick, some of the changes you've seen over time.
Well, I go back to the time when I served on an ad hoc committee on the Montgomery Road improvement with Dean Leonard and people like that. Montgomery Road had a deep ditch out here and a two-lane road, and it was really kind of a mess. We, of course, filled the ditch, built the sidewalk, built turning lanes, widened the street, and did away with half the curb cuts, which are things that impair traffic. And that was a big improvement for the city and the people who use it. And the other thing, you know, I think about our own fire department that we created and how well that's gone, and our pool and our safety center, our public works building. There are a lot of public buildings and facilities that are important to the way this place runs. And those are the kind of things that I just remember as being important. But always I felt that the motivation of the people was to serve and make it a better place, with a few exceptions. We had some pretty argumentative people on council earlier, and that didn't seem to be their motivation. But in general, it was, you know, very positive, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be a part of it.
Very good, thank you, Dick. Gerri, your reflections of change over time.
Well, one of the personal changes I had, I've talked too much probably about the controversy, was that I got to give up Prilosec. So that was an important thing once we got more settled down. What was interesting in that controversy that we haven't mentioned is that groups like Pro Montgomery, and there were other people that used to routinely attend council meetings almost religiously to provide a challenge to some of the things that were going on in the front. It's not always so easy when you're a council member to get I mean, ideally you respectfully disagree with people, and you can do that in a respectful way, but when it gets out of control a little bit and things go on, and we were here till 12 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning, people just talking, whatever, and going on, carrying on. It was amazing, that group of people, ad hoc people, that just got created, and then after the new council was, we went back to kind of what most of, I think, of us have experienced, that you're down to one person or a couple of loyal people that come to some of the meetings, but a lot of times the room is empty except for you and the staff and whatever. You're back to all the mundane things of running a government, all the things that don't get public interest, and they shouldn't. I mean, all the routine budgets and all the other decisions that just have to be made that are maintenance kinds of issues. And of course, we count on them to respond when there's something that does. Like Ivan said, if it's something that gets them aggravated, we count on them to come and tell us that. That's how we keep some balance as well. That's their duty, and it's our responsibility to listen to them. During the time of my tenure as far as being on the council, and we've mentioned it before, but Twin Lakes, the Vintage Club began, lots of changes. Bethesda North had a couple of expansions that I think Gerri alluded to. Medical buildings that appeared, everything from an Elmcrest Motel, all these old names and stuff, you know, and when you look at them and think back, it's hard to put them in exactly the right place because you've gotten so used to the new one. But also I think a big change was the Triangle, and it started with the Sage Tavern probably, but the Triangle committing public money to buy something to control development, which I think led to some lessening of potential conflicts between a developer wanting A when you didn't think that was a crazy idea for you, versus controlling it and finding someone who will build something that, like Gerri said, you can be proud of when you're sitting at a restaurant and say, I think we've done good, okay? And now with the new development, it's even more so because it's bigger, it's more involved, like you mentioned, Todd, it's a lot of money, it's a grinding decision to sit up here and say, you know, are we going to spend $1 million? And the Triangle property was particularly interesting because there were some unknowns. There were gas stations that were under remediation for potential pollution, and we didn't know how long that was going to take. Then we didn't know on the south end if that old station had tanks or pollution underneath, which would have cost substantial amount of money and also extensive delays. So when those came back positive and BP finished their remediation early, it made the whole thing a lot easier. But always, are they going to find more soil? Are they going to have more problems on that? Okay? So I mean, all of those things are not, like has been mentioned, terribly difficult decisions, and that doesn't change. You sit and you mull and you do that over, and then sometimes you're still not sure, but you do the best you can in your own conscience and in the interests of the city. And that's a great thing, and that part hasn't changed, is from my perception. I've always felt safe, like Ivan afterwards, passing the council along. You didn't feel like you were deserting a sinking ship to avoid getting sucked in, despite what Gerri said.
Thank you, Gerri. Thank you, Gerri. Now it's your chance, Gerri, to tell us a little bit about change.
I think anytime that growth and opportunities abound, it brings the energy and the joy, but it also brings growing pains. And as Ray talked about, and we've talked about Montgomery Citizens Leadership Academy, we've turned residents into engaged citizens. And that can be good and bad. And we try to remind ourselves now that, you know, when someone is passionate about something that's kind of out there, they're an engaged citizen. So that's a good thing and a challenging thing. I think staffing changes can be challenging as well. We had additions of unions of the firefighters and also the public works building organized with the labor unions. On the good side of that, we had high performance organization, which still continues and has been a great thing as it's evolved. For a while, I think we kind of talked the talk. We maybe didn't always walk the walk, but now under Wayne's leadership, from what I hear from the staff, we're doing both. And that's been a great thing for the different departments to interact with each other. The police don't sit with the police only by the police or only by public works. They interact and they know each other, and they know who people are now instead of having to say, well, who is that over there? I think we had a great addition of the Montgomery Farmers Market, which started off a little rocky in a different location and has grown on Montgomery Elementary site and has really been an anchor in the community throughout spring, summer, and early fall. And also the Montgomery Chamber, who is there for the businesses but also has resident memberships. And those are only $35, and the Montgomery Chamber is always accepting new members if anyone wants to join. So that's my commercial.
Very good. Thank you, Gerri. Ken, your reflection of change over time.
Well, you know, with buildings coming down or going up, there has been quite a bit of that, and you know, that has certainly changed the look of the city. You know, when I think back you know, the Reserve of Montgomery, now the Vintage Club. We now have the small development being built on the former swim club property. So you have these kind of residential developments. And then, of course, the tear down trend. That's been a change that has affected the look of the city. And it is somewhat controversial. Some people are not totally happy with the tear down trend, where older, smaller residences like 50s ranch houses are torn down, and then a new, much more expensive and larger house is built on that lot. Other people think that that trend has certainly energized our housing stock and rejuvenated the housing stock. And so whatever side you're on that debate, there's no question that that has changed the look of a number of streets, and actually the tear downs have occurred all over the city. So we have these changes with buildings. You have, you know, the former Honda dealership went away, and now Twin Lakes is redeveloping that property. The former Perkins restaurant, that site got redeveloped, and we have a new building sitting there. So these all change the looks of the city, but also there are changes involving people. And this has been alluded to by Gerri, but I've certainly seen a lot of change with city staff and the way the city is operated. We do have, I think, every year it seems like the staff becomes more professional, more skillful. We have staff members who are contributing in all sorts of different ways that would have been hard to imagine years ago. There are people that are cross-trained now so that they can move over and fill in for somebody in another area where, you know, years ago that wasn't happening as much, if at all. So there's been a lot of change there, continuing upgrading and professionalism on the part of staff. The Chamber of Commerce has come a long way. And I can remember there were certain efforts over the years, as all of you can remember, to start different business groups. Some lasted for a little while, some had some effectiveness, other ones not so much. But in recent years, the Chamber of Commerce has really kind of found its path and is really charging ahead. I mean, it's, I think, a very, very big success story and a definite change. There's been a lot of progress with citizen engagement, and this has been alluded to, but now with the Montgomery Leadership Academy, with the CERT program, and all sorts of ways, our award-winning website, projects involving social media. There's a lot of information being transmitted to people, and there's a lot more engagement with people on every level, electronically, in person, and so forth. So when my wife and I first moved here, there were a lot of these things didn't exist, but now it seems like people are much more connected than they were before. And the city has done a tremendous job of reaching out and communicating with people in ways that just weren't done years ago. So I think that's been a major change, and a change for the good. So I would say those are some of the things, Ray, that come to mind.
Very good. Thank you, Ken. And Todd, will you bring us home on this question of change over time?
Sure. I think, you know, one of the major benefits that Montgomery has had for years and years and years, maybe the thing that hasn't changed, is its proximity. Its proximity to great schools, its proximity to highways that give us access to downtown so that we can be a good suburban environment. Obviously a great place to raise a family. And I think those things haven't changed. I think what has evolved is really the way that the community reacts to this opportunity they've been given. Certainly the involvement of the community, the engagement that we have sought to get people to commit their energy and effort to making this a better place. I think a lot of the obvious physical changes exist. We used to be a row of car dealerships. We fought very hard to overcome that. We have got a lot of new retail development. We have a lot of new housing stock. We have tear downs, bringing families back. While there's controversy over it's changed the face of Montgomery, that change may be a good change. Because certainly we live in a competitive environment. We have to compete with the Masons and the Madeiras and even the Blue Ashes of the world. So, you know, we cannot afford to not change. And I think we've done a great job over the years of recognizing that opportunity and taking advantage of it.
Very good. Thank you, Todd. You know, as I hear your answers to that question, I kind of think of the phrase, doing things people think just happen. You know, you know, I get an opportunity to speak to a lot of new residents and tenured residents. And as they get more involved and closer to the workings of local government, they learn the professionalism, they learn the business aspect of running the city. But I think the thing that Montgomery has never forgotten, in amongst all the business and the professionalism and so forth and so on, is the heart. And I'm very impressed by the decisions that are made and the tough decisions that are made, but it's still done to the benefit of the residents. So I thank you all for your tenure, and I thank you for your accomplishments.